Turning now to Venezuela, absolutely massive news here from the New York Times. Let's go ahead and put this up here on the screen. Quote, Trump has now called off all diplomatic outreach to Venezuela. The move paves the way for a possible military escalation against drug traffickers or the government of Nicolas Maduro. So I'm going to read portions of this just so everybody understands how batshit crazy it all is. Quote, President Trump has called off efforts to reach diplomatic agreement with Venezuela. Rick Grenell, who had been leading negotiations with Maduro and other top Venezuelan officials, but during a meeting with senior military leaders on Thursday, Trump called Grenell and instructed him all diplomatic outreach, including talks with Maduro, is to stop. Trump has grown frustrated with Maduro's failure to accede to American demands to give up power voluntarily and continued insistence by Venezuelan officials that they have no part in drug trafficking. American officials have said the Trump administration has now drawn up multiple military plans for escalation. Those operations could also include plans to force Mr. Maduro from power. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has called Maduro, quote, an illegitimate leader and repeatedly cited U.S. indictment of him on drug trafficking charges. This is insane. This is completely insane. Did you read that headline?
Yeah.
The paragraph said, Mr. Trump has grown frustrated at Maduro's decision not to accede to demands to step down from power. What? Yeah, so we're just calling, we're like, hey, you gotta go, man. And he's like, no. And they're like, okay, fine, we're just gonna force you out. Why? Because allegedly you're involved in drug trafficking. I mean, look, maybe. But at the end of the day, in terms of the whole drug trafficking thing, as we have covered here on the show, it's like 7% of all the cocaine in the United States. It's nothing. You wanna look at a government complicit in cocaine trafficking? It's called Mexico. Do we do anything about it? No, because it's the #1 trading partner with the US and it's a big problem, all right?
You wanna look at a government complicit in drug trafficking, look at ourselves and talk to Seth Harp about the war in Afghanistan, okay? If we're gonna be super real here. No, I mean, I think people can't wrap their heads around how crazy this is because they just can't accept that this is actually happening. But it really is happening. All of the, attacks on these boats that they tell us are drug smugglers, but they offer zero evidence of that. And oh, by the way, the widow of one of the people that was murdered on one of these Venezuela boats says he was just a fisherman.
Maybe she's lying. Nobody knows.
Yeah,
right?
but
that's the problem.
There's no reason to trust this government, right? And we know, as you've pointed out, as statistics show, like that would be very unlikely that a boat would be coming from Venezuela with drugs. That's just not really the way that the drug trafficking goes. Does some drugs transit through Venezuela? Yes. Do they get put on these small boats with 11 people on them, by the way, as one of them was? Very, very, very unlikely. In any case, all of this is a buildup to a regime change war. You have Marco Rubio in there who's been horny for this war for forever. So that's, a major part of this. You have Trump, and I want people to understand this too. This isn't just about Venezuela. Trump's efforts to classify drug traffickers as terrorists and as enemy combatants, obviously there are drug traffickers here in the US. And so if you are saying we are at war with these people and these are enemy combatants, guess what? Then yeah, you don't have to go through due process. You just can murder them and say, oh, well, they were terrorists, drug trafficker, enemies of the state. So it opens up Pandora's box in terms of the power of this administration, not to mention the way they are very clearly, this is the most clear indication that they're marching us along the path to a direct regime change effort here.
And people, look, credit to the Times, they broke the story. Although I will say, having dealt with some of this stuff in the past, let's just say that a lot of people who are against this are going to be leaking like hell against Marco Rubio. I know some of the interpersonal dynamics that are involved here. Rubio himself is the most powerful White House official. This is where I want to stick on. And this is the danger. And you can roll. I talked about Venezuela exactly whenever he was appointed. I was like, guys, this is dangerous. Because the cope I got was, he's changed his tune on Ukraine. He's changed his tune. And I go, yeah, maybe. But what about the issue areas which Trump doesn't care about, like Venezuela? I actually think I said that on a Lex Friedman podcast. Here we are, now here today. Trump doesn't care about Venezuela. To the extent that he did, he cares about some win against the drug traffickers. So Rubio dresses up something about how it's actually Maduro is involved in drug trafficking, and Trump is like, yeah, okay, let's go. right? And now he's like, oh yeah, we've got to have a win down there. And he's somehow convinced himself that knocking Maduro out of power is going to be some grand, amazing thing that can be very easily done, apparently by the United States military. This is a fantasy. Remember, Rubio himself and the entire South Florida community has been obsessed with Venezuela for their own personal expatriate reasons. That is the only reason, all right? Not for the rest of us. It's like the old Cuba politics, except now applied to Venezuela. Those people have been salivating over regime change in Venezuela now for years. And what they have done is that their representative, Marco Rubio, who previously tweeted a picture of Maduro next to Muammar Gaddafi, is that they explicitly want violent US-backed regime change, which of course is only going to make Maduro do what? Dig in, wouldn't you, if that's what happened to you? And this is the context of all of these strikes, because none of it makes any sense if you're thinking about drug trafficking. If you're going to strike a drug cartel, they're all in Mexico. They're all in Colombia. 93% of all it comes from there. You want to talk about fentanyl? It's all coming from China, transiting via Mexico. The DEA estimates 100% of all fentanyl that enters the United States comes from Mexico. 100% comes from Mexico.
By the way, most of the actual trafficker, like the people carried across the border, most of them are American citizens, by the way.
Yes, many are American. Yeah, I mean, I'm not denying that at all.
That's reality.
They work for the drug cartels, but yes, all right.
But if we're talking about the individual,
that is where
the individual people.
The way I understand that it usually works now is that the drug cartels will bring it to the border and they don't want to deal with it in America. And so they tell the American criminal organizations, you come across, you get it, and you drive across the border. We own Mexico. We don't need to worry about problems here, but your government is your own problem, right? So that's broadly what the story is. It's obviously a multifaceted issue of which we could actually do something about if we wanted to, but that's a separate conversation because that's nothing to do with Venezuela.
Right.
What's happening in Venezuela is like this neocon fever dream where they've whipped themselves up into demanding this guy step down for power. For what? What possible purpose? Who cares who rules Venezuela? Nobody. You can't even really say that this is about oil now at this point, although it wouldn't be a bad idea to buy it from him either if we got something out of it, let's say with a migrant deal or something.
Yeah, I mean, there were previous negotiations.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a great deal.
And the other thing about this is, let's say they get their fondest dream and, you know, they get their Gaddafi situation. Like, how did that go for Libya?
Exactly.
How will that go for Venezuela? Yes. You people are supposed to be opposed to, you know, refugees. Like, how many what kind of a migrant crisis is that going to create? I mean, it's just insane. Why do you want a failed state? Why do you want a failed state? But that is exactly what they're gunning for here. And I think it also, you know, I can't get into Trump's head, but number one, I think there's a boomer Cold War mentality. Number two, they tried a regime change thing in his first administration with the whole Juan Guaido situation, and then there was some like former Navy SEAL that turned up there that they claimed they had nothing to do with. But it appears that they may have also been funding or supporting some sort of, you know, former special ops to go in and actually actively try. There was some evidence to support that, to actively try, and that didn't work. So I think there's also this sense of like, oh, I failed the first time. I got to get him back. Like, I got to prevail this time around, that comes from Trump, fed by Marco Rubio. And then obviously Trump likes the power and control from just being able to say, this person's a drug trafficker, so I can just murder them because they're an enemy combatant. Let's put C1 up on the screen, which talks about this aspect of it in particular, which people really need to, again, sit with. Trump determines, just Trump by himself, not in consultation with you know, the Congress, certainly. The U.S. is now in a war with drug cartels, and the informed Congress of this. And let me read a little bit of what he says here. They say, Mr. Trump's move to formally deem his campaign against drug cartels as an active armed conflict means he is cementing his claim to extraordinary wartime powers, legal specialists said. In an armed conflict, as defined by international law, a country can lawfully kill enemy fighters, even when they pose no threat, detain them indefinitely without trials, and prosecute them in military courts. The focus, they say, of the administration's attacks has been boats from Venezuela. The surge of overdose deaths in recent years has been driven by fentanyl, which drug trafficking experts say comes from Mexico, not South America. Beyond factual issues, the bare bones argument has been broadly criticized on legal grounds. Think about, you know, the way this normally works. They say police arrest suspected drug dealers. It'd be a crime to instead summarily gun them down. But in an armed conflict, it is lawful to kill combatants for the opposing force on site. So that's why I say we need to focus on Venezuela and what's happening there. But this also gives Trump extraordinary lethal powers to use against anyone that the government claims is a suspected drug dealer and to summarily execute them without going through any sort of due process. Like, that is the power that they are claiming right now. And to me, that is absolutely terrifying.
What I'm also very afraid of is that would be the authority to assassinate Maduro. As you could say, he was a drug trafficker.
Absolutely.
So that is where I'm like, yo, this could get wild very, very, very quickly. Luckily, there are some voices that are speaking out and that are paying attention to this. Steve Bannon and them trying to put some pressure on the White House from the right, saying, hey, enough, let's not do this, calling out Marco Rubio. Let's take a listen.
Little Marco, our Secretary of State, we try to shift away from being a neocon. I thought we were there. He's got an amphibious ready group off the coast of Venezuela, and they're up on Capitol Hill pitching. And this is the first time that the Trump administration, I think, has ever acknowledged structural issues, or customs and traditions. So they're trying to get ahead of the War Powers Act by saying, no, you've misinterpreted. These are non-state actors. These are drug dealers. And we're going to do a lot more than just taking out these speedboats. The plan has, I think, been leaked that they intend to, or at least a plan is to tend to take over the ports and transportation nodes in an actual invasion.
Yeah, I mean, well said. He's exactly right about this huge and the thing is, and I want to give Ryan credit and maybe toot our horn a little bit. From the beginning, when we saw that amphibious group, I was like, oh man, this is not about drugs. Because you have to put it together with, you have to have lived in Washington and seen all this stuff long enough to know the hard-on that the neocons still have for Latin America. And they're obsessed with Venezuela. I will never understand it. Even Israel, I kind of get it. It's religious, right? Okay. I mean, you can not sympathize, but you can intellectually understand that. Ukraine, same thing. NATO, Russia, Cold War, and all that. Venezuela? Why? What? This is a country, it has no meaningful impact on us at all. And it's like they are just obsessed with it to the point where, as you said about the whole migrant crisis, I mean, a huge number of these people are Venezuelan. Because of the chaos down there. You want to create more chaos?
Right.
But you're saying we're going to create more chaos to have less chaos. How's that going to work?
Right.
No, we want stability in Venezuela. So, it'd be great if it came from Maduro. If not, whatever. That's our problem. It has nothing to do with us. And instead, we're creating all this legal justification from the Trump thing to now this ending of diplomacy. Guys, let's put C5 up here on the screen. This is scary shit. This is from Kash Patel. He says, Maduro isn't just corrupt. He's an indicted narco-terrorist with a $50 million DOJ bounty. Under my leadership, the FBI is now checking off every dollar, every account, every enabler. America will never be a safe haven for his blood money. But remember, here he's calling him narco-terrorist, which fits with that legal definition, which we learned earlier. $50 million DOJ bounty. Apparently, they want to raise it to some $100 million. They're basically trying to encourage, some sort of coup inside of the Venezuelan government, which, again, is America even good enough at coups anymore? Not really. When's the last time we pulled off a coup? Exactly, in Latin America that was apparently, worked out well. I think it's been a long time. It's been since the 1970s. So the point is just around all of this is it's a psychotic, insane ideological plan. Trump is either too stupid or he knows exactly what's going on here. And that there's no pressure from what I have seen from the ideological kind of anti-war right, except from Steve Bannon and from Kurt Mills, who was played in that clip. And I think the reason is that they've been effectively bamboozled with this drug trafficking thing. Because it's like a fantasy, right? But we got to take it to the cartels. I think a lot of people want that. I want that. But we have to live in reality. Can we really just bomb Mexico? Not really. When it's the #1 trading partner of the United States. It's a problem, right? What do? Do you want to nuke the U.S. economy and NAFTA overnight, all these trucks that come across the border? It's not a feasible solution. And then at the same time, you have, they've killed all of us, and so they're trying to tie fentanyl to it. That's what I immediately saw from a lot of the government. Is this is all about fentanyl. I'm like, this is literally a lie. There's no fentanyl that comes from Venezuela to the United States. None. Zero. And you're trying to disguise a regime change war. And so a lot of the more traditional anti-war right is not up in arms about this because they actually buy the bullshit. They don't do their own research.
Yeah.
You can only point to Bannon and Rand Paul. And then, of course, the media. I mean, this should be wall-to-wall shit. Cutting off diplomacy cutting off diplomacy with Maduro and saying we are actively considering regime change at the very same time that you have an entire amphibious naval assault group and we're bombing things in the Caribbean and international waters.
And you're telling
you
Congress,
need to be a genius?
this is a war.
We're telling you, this is a war. Wake up. Like, this is as close that we are possibly could be. And I actually think the lack of pressure makes it 10 times more likely. Because at least they are somewhat receptive to online criticism. You can't deny that some of the anti-Israel, Gaza, or anti-Israel, like part of the right wing,
anti-Iran strike,
anti-Iran, right? It
limited
had
that
some
engagement.
impact.
Yeah.
Look, obviously we were not successful. On Ukraine, same thing. I think some of the pushback had some impact. I have not gotten even 10% of what I want, but I do think that kind of organizing a coalition, being very loud, actually did something about this. Here, there's nothing because everybody buys the drug trafficking shit, and that makes it, that plus the political constituency. Where does Trump live, Krystal? Florida, right? Who do you think he's surrounded by down in Palm Beach?
True.
It's bad.
Yeah.
This is very bad.
No, I think you're right. I think that, people on the right just say like, oh, the boat went boom, cool, like way to go based. And that's like, and it's so, I mean, as you pointed out, they're literally announcing what they're doing here. And everyone's just pretending like this isn't happening. Trump made some pretty ominous comments too. Let's go ahead and play C8.
They're not coming in by sea anymore, so now we'll have to start looking about the land because they'll be forced to go by land. And let me tell you right now, that's not going to work out well for them either.
So they're not coming by sea anymore. Now they're coming by land, so we'll have to look at the land. What does that mean? What does that mean? That what kind of an expansion of now who are you going to be drone striking, bombing, or whatever? Where are they going to be? What is that going to mean?
Yeah, are we doing strikes inside of Venezuela? Again, like, they keep floating this stuff in Mexico. I'll believe it when I see it. I just simply do not believe it will happen because of the geopolitical ramifications for trade. And look, Mexico is a democracy. I mean, Sheinbaum is very popular, and they have all kinds of corruption problems. I would never defend the Mexican government. But at the very least, like, the one thing they are probably not going to tolerate, in my opinion, is literal bombing on their soil without the explicit permission of the Mexican government, which you and I is never going to happen.
And she literally has like a 92% approval rating. Like, they're very united behind her.
And by the way, they're actually kind of working with us a little bit right now. Not that it's actually doing anything. Apparently cocaine importation is higher than ever. So yes, congratulations. These strikes are really doing a lot to actually stop the amount of cocaine coming into America.
There's another point to be made there too, which is that drug trafficking convictions are actually way down because they've reassigned so many of the federal agents that would normally be focused on that to like rounding up Jose at Home Depot. So they have, drug trafficking, human trafficking, those sorts of convictions and indictments are significantly down under this administration because of where they have shifted their resources to.
Yeah, Ryan actually, by the way, thinks it's a good thing. He said America needs to do more cocaine. So that's Ryan. Yeah, that's the most Ryan
Let's
take
have Don Jr.
of
on
all
to
time.
discuss.
Hey, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I think it's sad, people poisoning their brains. I guess they think it's a good thing. Finally, by the way, we would just be remiss just to not point out who some of the clowns involved in all of this are. Can we put this please on the screen, the challenge coin? Kash Patel has now come out with his own genre of challenge coin. For those who are not just listening, how would you possibly describe this?
What is this? Is like the
Punisher symbol,
and then on the back
guns.
It says presented by the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, and has his signature.
2 guns pointed down.
Real tough. He's a tough guy.
Very tough guy. In the GWAT community, I would hope that anybody who does this type of stuff is cringe, and I won't say the other word that they usually would say that accompanies somebody who has something like this. In general, people who have fought and died and, served,
entered Valhalla,
generally don't memify it into Punisher logos, and that
Kash Patel is one of the most
he's the most
members
try-hard,
of the Trump administration.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Yeah, at least he is a good reminder that not all the stereotypes about Indians are true, because some of them are fucking idiots. But all right, there we go.
He's defining the stereotypes.
He's true. He did. Thank you, Kash, for showing the country that we are not all
the true
nerds,
breadth of Indian culture.
Some of us can also be 40-year-old losers who talk about Valhalla and have challenge coins and can podcast their way to the top. So yeah, thank you, Kash.
Yeah, but haven't gotten an update on that Tyler Robinson investigation.
It's been weeks. Yeah, you're right.
Nothing new has come out, at least from the official channels, so
that's true. I mean, at the same time, the legal system moves slowly, right? I mean, we had, Luigi, it's been almost 9 months, right, since that happened. We're not even at trial yet, so.
Yeah.
He sat in prison too for a while.
To be honest, to me, it's more interesting that there isn't more mainstream journalism digging into, okay, well, what was the timeline? Let's talk to his family members. I mean, Ken Klippenstein continues to be the only person who really spoke to any of his friends. How could that be?
That's weird.
You know?
Weird.
Like, Ken was able to get a hold of a number of his friends.
There are a few, but I mean, there is some weird shit that's going on. I mean, this is all sidetrack. You know, the so-called boyfriend or whatever has gone missing. You know, is like unable to be found. You got all these tech, you know, the whole Dairy Queen video from Canada. Nobody knows if it's real or not. There's some stuff about whether Dairy Queen even existed. I mean, listen, I mean, not to get too deep down the rabbit hole.
We did get that one surveillance video from a gas station
Right.
of him like fueling up the next day, just like casually in the same maroon shirt, fueling up at some gas station 200 miles away.
Police officer who, family member, no interview, you know, nothing like that.
Yeah,
Friends
true.
and family, other members of the Discord, you know, there's been
Nothing.
no major. So anyway, all right, take that for what you will. All right, let's get to Epstein, shall we? Speaking of conspiracy.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.